get our wheel speed up to medium fast. My clay is already centered. My fingers are not wiggling around. The clay is sort of just gliding through my hands. Okay. So what you need to do is start with a nice, short, low dome. This is about 1 inch tall, and the width depends on how much clay you got started with. This is about 3.5 inches wide, or the width of my palm. And it started out as a 1 pound ball of clay. I'm going to grab my wet sponge, let my finger, my thumb float over the middle, and once it's perfectly in the center, we're going to push down with our other hand and add a little bit of water. The center is always dry, so we need to make sure that we add a little bit of water to that middle. And when you think you've gone down far enough, you're going to stop the wheel. This wheel doesn't stop for some reason. This is a funny wheel. There you go. Okay. You're going to poke your pin tool straight down the middle. Put your finger to where the clay ends and pull it out. So I know that I have a 1/4 inch. Your goal is between 1/4 and 1/2 inch. Okay? It's the only thing you need the pin tool for and for trimming. We'll get our speed back up, press over that hole to compress it closed. And now we're going to begin to pull our walls. So for that, use a few fingers. Always start from the center and pull towards your other hand so that you can then squeeze and guide the clay to create walls. So we're dragging clay from the middle all the way out to the side. When your fingers are in line, the hand on the inside is always a little bit higher because you have that base or that foot. So you have to wait until your outside hand catches up so that you can squeeze together in tandem. If at any point you feel dryness or friction, slowly release your clay, get more water, and resume. Otherwise, you'll end up ripping your clay. So we're now squeezing the walls. And as our fingers get to the very top, we're going to compress. Okay? So once again, start from the middle, drag the clay all the way out to the outer hand. And when they're in the same place, you slowly guide the clay up. Now, the top of this is really uneven, so I'm going to demonstrate how to trim. So what I did is I held the pin tool and slowly dug it through the wall of the clay, and when it reached my finger on the inside, I lifted off. So you want a medium speed here. Fast speed is for centering. Medium to fast is for pulling the walls and making the hole. Always start from that center. When your hands are in the same place, then you can start to create the walls of your cylinder. If your pot is really off center or it starts to flare out, you can collar in. It's really similar to coning up, where you're kind of cupping your hands and slowly closing the diameter of that circle. Both hands are working together here. My elbows are locked to my body or onto the splash pan. And I'm slowly raising the walls, making them thinner and thinner with each pull. Compress the rim. Starting again from the middle and the inside, squeezing the clay down at the bottom and raising that clay through the walls of my cylinder, compress the rim. So it takes about 10 to 15 pulls until you end up with something that's decent. The top is really uneven, so I'll show you how to trim the rim. Oops, I have to slow down. This Shimpo wheel is a little funky. Sometimes it doesn't shut off. It needs a pedal adjustment. So your goal is to make 6 cylinders. And if you end up with a bad one, you're going to learn from it. So I'm going to show you how to trim all of this excess down here by using your wooden rib tool. So I always like to wet the tool. If you use something dry, it's going to kind of rip the clay. And we don't want so much ripping. So we're pushing the rib against the bottom of the wheel and the clay. You can also push from the inside to straighten out your walls and remove all of that extra slip. And then you're going to use the point to trim the bottom. You can also use your wooden knife to trim the bottom. We want a really nice beveled foot so that when we slide the wire on, we don't end up with something that's flared out and super sharp. The way to finish your cylinder is to make sure to get any water that's pooled in the center. You can spin the wheel slow and use a damp sponge to absorb that water. You're going to make your rims nice and round so that they're comfortable to drink out of. And you're going to remove any sort of globular slip. Clean the wheel of any excess slip from the top and the side if you want, but not underneath. Shut it off. So this Shimpo wheel here is a ghost wheel. So to shut this one off, you have to go full speed and then off, and that's really the only way to shut off. If you end up with something that wasn't good, you're going to shorten your wire by wrapping it around your hands. You don't want to ever fold your wire. Drag it underneath halfway and then slice it straight through the center. Get a wear board. They're under the plaster table on that side of the room. You can get a small one. Bring it nice and close. And just keep half. We're going to note how thick and thin your walls are and start from left to right so that your most recent one is on one end and your first one, which is usually the worst, is on the other end. Okay? All right. If there's a full collapse, you're going to recycle that piece. We only want cylinders that resemble the shape that we're going for. We won't learn any information from something that has fully collapsed. So you need at least one good cylinder, which will probably be your last or close to your last. And for the rest of them, your job is to cut them in half and recycle the other half and just keep one so that we can look to see how much you've progressed from this week throughout March. Okay? When your clay is really soft and mushy and you have time in the studio, you turn it into a little rainbow and you let it dry. That way air circulates through and dries it quickly. So I'm going to clean my hands.